I always thought Camille and I had something solid. 5 years of marriage isn't a lifetime, but it's enough to build trust, or Hawkins, right? We'd hit some rough patches lately. Sure, distant silences, fewer laughs, but I figured it was just life piling up. Work stress, maybe. Nothing big. That all changed one night when I couldn't sleep. I grabbed her tablet to check the weather, and there it was, an email notification she hadn't closed out. A life insurance policy. My name on it. $1.5 million payout. Beneficiary, Camille Weston. My wife. My stomach dropped. I sat there in the dark, staring at the screen, my mind racing. Why hadn't she told me? Was this normal? I didn't say anything. I couldn't, not yet. I needed to think. The next morning, she was up early, humming in the kitchen like everything was fine. She handed me a water bottle with this soft, sweet smile and said, "You should drink more water, honey." I took it, said thanks, and brought it to my lips. Then I caught it, a faint, bitter smell. Not like our usual tap water. My heart started pounding, but I kept my face calm. She was watching me, her eyes steady. I smiled back, waited until she turned to grab her coffee, and swapped our bottles quick. Hers was already open. She'd been sipping it while cooking. I nudged mine toward her spot on the counter. "Yours is cold still," I said casually. She didn't hesitate, just picked it up and took a long drink. Then another. I watched her every move, my chest tight, wondering what I'd just done. Had I imagined that smell? Was I losing it? But deep down, I knew something was wrong. She finished the bottle, wiped her mouth, and asked if I wanted breakfast. I nodded, playing along, my mind screaming. If that policy wasn't an accident, if that smell wasn't my imagination, then my wife, my Camille, might have just tried to kill me. And I'd turned it back on her. We sat there eating toast like it was any other Saturday, but I couldn't taste a thing. I kept glancing at her, waiting for something, a cough, a stumble, anything. She looked fine. Too fine. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I'd misread it all. But that email burned in my head. $1.5 million. That's not pocket change. That's motive. I didn't know what to do next, so I just kept quiet, watching her sip coffee, wondering if I'd dodged something awful or if I'd just poisoned my own wife over nothing. The uncertainty gnawed at me. I couldn't shake the feeling that our little life, our quiet mornings, our shared bed, was a lie. I finished my food, cleared the table, and told her I'd run some errands. She smiled again, that same soft smile, and said, "Hurry back." I grabbed my keys and left, my hands shaking. I needed air. I needed answers. Outside, the world felt too bright, too normal. Cars passed, birds chirped, and I stood by my truck, replaying it all. The email, the smell, the swap. I wasn't crazy, was I? I climbed in and drove. No real destination, just moving. My phone buzzed. Camille texting, asking if I'd grab milk. So ordinary. So her. I typed back a quick, "Sure," and kept going. I didn't know who to call or what to say. "Hey, I think my wife's trying to off me." It sounded insane. But that policy wasn't fake. I'd seen it. Black and white. My name. Her payout. I pulled into a gas station, parked, and just sat there, staring at the dashboard. I had to figure this out. Test the water somehow. Check her tablet again. Something. Because if I was right, I just saved my own life. And if I was wrong, I'd nearly killed the woman I loved over a hunch. Either way, I couldn't go home yet. Not until I knew for sure. I took a deep breath, started the engine, and headed to the hardware store. I'd buy a lock for my office door. Just in case. Then I'd dig deeper. I had to. This wasn't over. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was different now, even though the house looked the same when I got back from the hardware store. Camille was in the living room, curled up on the couch with a book, acting like nothing had happened. She looked up and smiled, asking if I'd remembered the milk. I held up the bag, nodded, and headed to the kitchen to put it away. My hands were still shaky from the morning, but I kept my face steady. She'd been so sweet since I walked in, too sweet, maybe. Like she was trying to sell me something. It wasn't the Camille I'd known for years, the one who'd snap at me over leaving dishes in the sink or tease me about my bad singing in the shower. This was someone else, someone playing a part. I locked my office door that night, the new deadbolt clicking into place, and sat at my desk, staring at her tablet. I'd swiped it from the counter while she was in the bathroom. The email was still there, $1.5 million, my name, her as the beneficiary. I scrolled through her inbox, my heart thumping loud enough I swore she'd hear it through the walls. Nothing else jumped out, just work stuff and spam, but I wasn't done. I needed more. The next few days, she kept up the act. Homemade dinners every night, chicken pot pie, lasagna, even my favorite steak with mashed potatoes. She'd rub my shoulders after, her fingers digging in just right, and start talking about how stressed I'd been. You work too hard, she'd say, her voice all soft and warm. We should take a trip, get away from the city. Just us. Maybe somewhere in the mountains. My stomach twisted when she said it. The mountains. Quiet. Remote. No one around. I forced a grin and said, yeah, that sounds nice. She snuggled up close on the couch that night, her head on my chest, whispering about how it'd be good to reconnect. I could feel her breath on my neck, and part of me wanted to believe her, just sink into it and pretend everything was fine. But that email kept flashing in my head. $1.5 million. And that bitter smell from the water bottle. I couldn't let it go. I had to play along, though. Let her think I was buying it. So I nodded, squeezed her hand, and said, let's plan it soon. Her eyes lit up, and she kissed me, long and slow. It felt good, too good, but I couldn't trust it. I needed help. That's when I thought of Jordan Cross, my old college roommate. He was a cybersecurity guy now, some hotshot freelancer who could dig into anything digital. I hadn't talked to him in years, but he owed me one from back in the day when I covered for him during a dorm bust. I shot him a text late that night from my office, door locked again. Hey, man, need a favor. Can you look into someone's finances? Quietly. He replied fast, who's in trouble? I hesitated, then typed, my wife. Think she's hiding something. Call me tomorrow. I deleted the thread right after, just in case. The next morning, Camille was back at it, pancakes, fresh coffee, even a little note on the table that said, love you. I smiled, kissed her forehead, and headed to work like it was normal. Jordan called me on my lunch break. What's going on, dude? He asked, his voice low like he was already in spy mode. I told him everything, the policy, the water, her sudden sweetness. He whistled through the phone. That's messed up. Send me what you've got, email screenshots, anything. I'll start tracing her accounts. But you gotta be careful. If she's serious, she's watching you too. I agreed, said I'd email him later, and hung up. My hands were sweating as I sat in my truck, the noise of the parking lot fading out. Watching me. The thought made my skin crawl. I started noticing little things after that. How she'd linger near my office door sometimes, asking what I was working on. How she'd pick up my phone to check the time when hers was right there. That night, she suggested the trip again over dinner. Briar Ridge, she said, pulling up pictures on her phone, steep trails, rocky cliffs, no cell service. It's perfect. I nodded, said it looked great. But my mind was spinning. Perfect for what? A getaway or something else? I emailed Jordan the insurance screenshot from my work laptop that night, using a burner account I set up quick. He texted back, got it. Digging now. Lay low. I couldn't sleep after that. I lay next to her, listening to her breathe, wondering who she really was. The woman I'd married wouldn't do this, would she? But the evidence was piling up, and I couldn't ignore it. I had to keep pretending, keep her close, let her think she was winning. Because if she was planning what I thought, I needed proof. I needed Jordan. And I needed time. The mountains were coming, and I had to be ready. I don't know how I kept it together those next few weeks, but I did. Camille and I went through the motions like we were some perfect couple straight out of a magazine. We'd hold hands when we walked downtown, her fingers laced through mine, warm and soft. At dinner, she'd laugh at my dumb jokes and lean across the table to wipe sauce off my chin with a napkin, her eyes sparkling like they used to back when we first met. We even started posting selfies, her idea, of course. Let's show the world we're still us, she said one night, snapping a picture of us on the couch, her cheek pressed to mine. I smiled for the camera, but inside, my chest was tight. It was all so flawless, so staged. She was good at this, too good. I couldn't help but wonder how long she'd been practicing. Every move she made felt like part of some bigger game, and I was the one trying to figure out the rules before it was too late. Meanwhile, I was watching her closer than ever. Little things started sticking out, things I might have missed if I wasn't looking. Like the way she'd slip a burner phone into a drawer when I walked into the room, pretending she was just tidying up. Or how she'd step outside for work calls at midnight, her voice too low for me to catch anything through the window. One night, I waited until she was asleep and checked her regular phone. Nothing weird there, just texts with her sister and some coworkers. But then I found it. A thread with someone labeled LD tucked under a fake contact name, Linda, dentist, like I wouldn't notice. I scrolled quick, my pulse hammering. They were talking about me. He's a heavy guy, but the drop would sell it, one message said. Another, accidents happen all the time up there. Just push right. My mouth went dry. Push right? Up there? She was planning something, and it wasn't a romantic getaway. I snapped photos of the screen with my own phone, hands trembling, and sent them to Jordan right then, locked in my office at 2 a.m. His reply came fast. Holy crap, man. Let it play out. She's building your case for you. I'm running this LD now. Building my case. That stuck with me. If I went to the cops now, it'd be my word against hers. Some texts and a weird water bottle wouldn't hold up. I needed more. So I kept playing along, kept being the husband she wanted me to be. The next morning, I brought her coffee in bed, kissed her cheek, and said, "You're right about that trip. We need it." She beamed, sat up, and started rattling off plans, hiking trails, a cabin rental, how peaceful it'd be. I nodded, sipping my own coffee, wondering if she could hear my heart pounding. "Briar Ridge sounds perfect," I said, forcing enthusiasm. She didn't flinch, just kept smiling. She thought she had me. Good. Let her think that. At work, I barely focused. My desk was a mess of papers I didn't touch, my inbox piling up. All I could think about was those texts. Push right. An accidental fall. My fall. I started carrying my phone everywhere, even to the bathroom, just in case she tried to snoop. I'd catch her watching me sometimes, subtle glances over her book or while she chopped vegetables for dinner. "You okay, honey?" she'd ask, all concern and sweetness. "Yeah, just tired," I'd say, smiling back. It was exhausting, this dance we were doing, but I couldn't slip. Not yet. Jordan texted me updates when he could. He'd traced some of her bank stuff, small transfers to an account he couldn't pin down yet, but he was working on it. "LD's a ghost so far," he said in one message. "But I'll get him. Hang tight. Hang tight." Easy for him to say. I was the one sleeping next to her every night, wondering if she'd try something before the trip. One evening, we went out to dinner, a little Italian place we used to love. She ordered wine. I stuck to water. We talked about nothing, weather, a movie we'd seen, her coworker's new baby. Normal stuff. But I couldn't relax. Halfway through, she reached for my hand across the table and said, "I'm so glad we're doing this. The trip, I mean. It's like a fresh start." I squeezed her hand back, nodded, and said, "Me too." My voice sounded steady, but inside, I was screaming. Fresh start for who? Her, with $1.5 million and a dead husband? I paid the bill, we walked home arm in arm, and I posted another selfie that night, us outside the restaurant, smiling. "Date night with my favorite person," I captioned it. She liked it right away, added a heart emoji. The comments rolled in. "You guys are goals." And I wanted to laugh. Goals. Sure. I wasn't just playing her game anymore. I was building my own. Every photo, every sweet moment was evidence. If she went through with it, I'd have proof we were happy. Proof she'd planned it cold. I went to bed that night with my back to her, listening to her breathe, plotting my next move. I wasn't the clueless husband she thought. Not anymore. I couldn't believe we were actually doing it, driving up to Briar Ridge Park like it was some big romantic adventure. Camille was in the passenger seat, humming along to the radio, her hair tied back in a loose ponytail, looking every bit like the wife I'd fallen for years ago. The road twisted through thick pines, the air getting cooler as we climbed higher. She'd picked this place, insisted on it, remote, rugged, no cell service unless you hit the right spot. "It's just what we need," she'd said back home, showing me pictures of the rocky cliffs and steep trails. Now that we were here, my gut churned every time I glanced at her. Those texts with LD, push right, the drop would sell it, kept looping in my head. But I smiled anyway, kept my voice light. "This is gonna be great," I said, gripping the wheel a little tighter. She reached over, squeezed my knee, and nodded. "I knew you'd love it." Love it. Right. I'd packed more than just hiking boots for this trip. In my jacket pocket, I had a micro camera, tiny thing I'd ordered online after Jordan suggested it. "Record everything," he texted. "Audio, video, whatever you can get." I tested it at home, clipped it to my collar, hit record, and caught clear footage of me making coffee. It'd do the job. I also had a GPS tracker slipped into my shoe, a little device Jordan swore by. "If something goes down, they'll find you," he'd said. I wasn't taking chances. We pulled into the parking lot at the trailhead, just a gravel patch with a faded sign, Briar Ridge Summit, 3 miles. Camille grabbed the picnic basket from the back. She'd packed it herself. wouldn't let me touch it. "I've got surprises in here," she said with a wink. I forced a laugh, hoisted my backpack, and we started walking. The trail was quiet, just the crunch of our steps and the wind rustling the trees. She led the way, chatting about the views we'd get at the top. I nodded, kept pace, my mind racing. This place was perfect for her plan. I looked it up after she suggested it. Briar Ridge had a reputation. Hikers disappearing, tragic falls, they called them in the news. No witnesses, no proof, just gone. We hit the summit after a couple hours, a wide, flat stretch of rock overlooking a sheer drop. The valley sprawled out below, all greens and browns, beautiful if you didn't know what might be coming. Camille set the basket down, spread out a blanket, and patted the spot next to her. "Lunchtime," she said, pulling out sandwiches and a couple water bottles. My throat tightened when I saw them. Same brand as that morning back home, the one with the bitter smell. She handed me one, her eyes locked on mine, and said, "Drink up, you've earned it." I took it, twisted the cap slow, and brought it to my lips. That smell hit me again, faint, sharp, wrong. She was watching, her smile tight, waiting. I faked a sip, just let it touch my mouth, then lowered it and grinned. "This is nice," I said, leaning back on my hands. "I'm glad we came." Her shoulders relaxed a little, and she nodded. "Me too." I'd already swapped the bottles while she was unpacking the food, slipped hers into my spot when she turned to grab the napkins. Mine was in her hand now, the one she'd meant for me. She opened it, took a sip, then another, casual as anything. I watched her swallow, my pulse thudding in my ears. Was it really poisoned? Or was I paranoid? We ate the sandwiches, hers untouched by me, just in case, and talked about nothing. The weather, the hike, how pretty the view was. She seemed fine at first, chatty even, but I could see her fidgeting, glancing at me like she was waiting for something. 10 minutes passed, then 20. I kept the camera rolling, its little lens tucked under my collar, catching every word, every move. "You feeling okay?" I asked at one point, keeping my tone light. She nodded quick. "Yeah, just tired from the climb." But her voice was off, a little shaky. I didn't push it. We packed up after a while, and she suggested walking to the edge for a better look. My stomach flipped. This was it, the drop from those texts. I followed her, staying a step behind, my hand brushing the knife I'd tucked in my pocket. Not to use, just to have. She stood close to the edge, wind tugging at her hair, and turned to me with that same soft smile. "Beautiful, right?" I nodded, stepping back a bit. "Yeah, but let's not get too close." She laughed, waved it off, and took another sip from her bottle. I waited, pretending to adjust my pack, keeping her in my sight. Whatever she put in there, if anything, was in her system now. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew I had to stay sharp. This was her game, her spot. But I turned it around. The camera hummed against my chest, the tracker blinked silently in my shoe, and I stood there, watching my wife, wondering how far she'd go and how far I'd have to. I stood there on that rocky summit, the wind whipping around us, watching Camille like my life depended on it, because maybe it did. She was still sipping from that water bottle, the one I'd swapped, her eyes darting to me every few seconds like she was checking for something. I kept my face calm, leaned against a boulder, and fiddled with my backpack straps, acting like I didn't have a care in the world. The micro camera hummed against my chest, catching every second of this, her standing there, the cliff behind her, the bottle in her hand. 10 minutes ticked by, slow as anything, and I started wondering if I'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe there was nothing in that water. Maybe I'd swapped them for no reason, and this was all in my head. But then I saw it, her hand trembled, just a little, as she capped the bottle. She brushed it off, turned to me with a smile, and said, "Ready to head back?" Her voice was steady, but her steps weren't. 20 minutes in, it hit her hard. We were halfway to the trail when she stumbled, grabbed my arm, and laughed it off. "Guess I'm more tired than I thought," she said, but her grip tightened, and her face went pale. I played along, put an arm around her waist, and said, "Take it easy, we've got time." Inside, my heart was hammering. This was it. Whatever she'd meant for me was happening to her. She slumped again a few steps later, her breathing getting rough, eyes fluttering like she couldn't focus. She sank to her knees right there by the overlook, the drop just feet away, and I froze for a second, watching her. Part of me wanted to let her sit there, let whatever it was run its course. But I couldn't. Not yet. I crouched beside her, shook her shoulder, and shouted, "Camille, hey, stay with me." My voice echoed off the rocks, loud and panicked, partly real, partly for the camera. She mumbled something I couldn't catch, her head lolling. I whispered low, so only she'd hear if she could. Now you know how it feels. Her eyes flickered open for a moment, wide and confused, then shut again. I wasn't a monster. I wasn't going to leave her there to die. I brought an emergency beacon, a little rental unit I'd picked up quietly before the trip, tucked in my pack. I pulled it out, flipped the switch, and waited for the signal to ping the ranger station. While it blinked, I dragged her a few feet from the edge, propped her against a rock, and checked her pulse. Weak, but there. She was out cold, her chest rising and falling uneven. I grabbed the bottle she'd dropped, sealed it tight, and stuffed it in my bag. Evidence. The camera was still rolling. I adjusted it quick, made sure it caught her slump there, me pacing the whole scene. 15 minutes later, I heard the chopper blades chopping through the air. A ranger team dropped in, 2 guys in orange vests with a stretcher. What happened? One yelled over the noise. I shouted back. She just collapsed. Think it's heat or something. They didn't question it, just loaded her up, strapped her in, and asked if I was coming. I shook my head, said I'd hike down and meet them at the hospital. The chopper lifted off, dust swirling around me, and I stood there alone, watching it disappear. My hands were shaking as I sank onto the blanket we'd left behind. I replayed it all, her handing me that bottle, the swap, her falling apart. If I hadn't switched them, that'd be me up there, airlifted out, or worse, over that cliff like she'd planned. I hiked back slow, the GPS tracker in my shoe blinking steady, my mind spinning. By the time I got to the truck, my shirt was soaked with sweat, and my legs felt like jelly. I drove to the hospital, 2 hours down winding roads, and walked into the ER like I was just some worried husband. The nurse said Camille was stable, sedatives in her system, they thought, plus some weird compound they were testing. I nodded, played dumb, and asked to see her. She was in a bed, hooked to machines, eyes closed. I stood there, looking at her, feeling nothing but cold. When the cops showed up an hour later, standard for something like this, I was ready. I handed over the bottle, still sealed, and told them about the insurance policy. Found an email about it a while back, I said, pulling up the screenshot on my phone. Didn't think much of it till today. They took it, asked a few questions. Had she been acting strange? Any fights lately? I kept it simple. She's been stressed, but we were fine. Came up here to relax. They nodded, scribbled notes, and said they'd look into it. I didn't mention the texts or LD, not yet. Jordan was still digging, and I needed everything airtight. I sat in the waiting room after, staring at the floor. I didn't want revenge. I'd stopped her, turned it back, and that was enough. What I wanted was truth, justice, something to make sense of this mess. My wife tried to kill me. My wife. The words didn't fit, but the facts did. The camera footage was on me, the bottle was with the cops, and Camille was alive, for now. I'd saved her, but I wasn't sure why. Maybe I still loved her, deep down. Or maybe I just needed her to face what she'd done. I drove home from the hospital that night with the windows down, letting the cold air slap me awake. Camille was still there, stable but sedated, and the cops had what I'd given them. The bottle, the insurance email. My head was a mess, bouncing between relief that I'd made it out of Briar Ridge alive and this hollow ache that wouldn't quit. 5 years with her, and it had come to this. Me sitting in a waiting room while she lay in a bed, caught in her own trap. I didn't sleep when I got back. I sat in my office, door locked, and pulled the micro camera from my jacket. The footage was all there. Her handing me the bottle, the swap when she wasn't looking, her collapsing by the cliff. My voice, shaky but clear, calling for help. I watched it twice, feeling sick each time, then emailed it to Jordan with a quick note. This is it. What now? He called me an hour later, voice low like he was hiding from someone. You're a lucky bastard, he said. That's proof. She can't wiggle out of this. Cops have the bottle, right? I told him yeah, and he said he'd been digging deeper. Found something, bank transfers, small ones, to a guy named Lance Duval. Ex-con, assault record. Her old boyfriend from before you. I'm pulling more, but it's him. LD from the texts. My stomach dropped. Lance. I'd heard that name once, years ago, when she'd mentioned a guy she dated in college. Some loser who'd gotten rough with her, she'd said. She'd played it off like it was nothing, but now it clicked. He wasn't just some ghost from her past. He was in this with her. The mountain thing was his idea, Jordan went on. I've got surveillance stills, him near your house last week, scoping it. She's the one who went along. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. So it wasn't just her. She had help, a partner. That made it worse somehow, like I wasn't even worth her doing it alone. I asked Jordan what to do, and he said, sit tight. Cops will test that bottle, tie it to the policy. I'll send them Lance's stuff anonymous. Let them connect it. You just play the shocked husband. Shocked husband. I could do that. I'd been living it for weeks. The next day, the hospital called. Camille was awake, talking, but weak. I didn't go see her. I couldn't face her yet, not with Lance's name burning in my head. Instead, I waited for the cops. They showed up that afternoon, 2 detectives in plain clothes, asking to sit down. I let them in, offered coffee, kept my hands steady. They had the tox report. Sedatives, high dose, plus some rare plant extract, unpronounceable. Not something you'd find in a store, one said, eyeing me. You know anything about this? I shook my head, told them about the insurance email again, said I'd been worried but didn't want to believe it. She's been off lately, I added, but I thought it was stress. They nodded, asked about the trip, why Briar Ridge, who planned it. Her idea, I said. She wanted to get away. They scribbled it down, then pulled out photos, grainy shots of a guy in a hoodie near our mailbox, time-stamped a week ago. Recognize him? I squinted, played dumb, said no. Inside, I knew it was Lance. They didn't push, just said they'd be in touch, and left. I locked the door behind them and texted Jordan. They've got pics of him. Tox report too. He replied fast. Good. She's screwed. A few days later, the detectives called me to the station. Camille had talked, cracked under the evidence piling up. They sat me in a room with a one-way glass, her on the other side, pale and small in a hospital gown. I watched, arms crossed, as she told them Lance pressured her. He said it'd be easy, she mumbled, voice hoarse. Said the money would fix everything. I panicked. I didn't mean it to go this far. Her eyes were red, tears streaking her face, but I didn't feel a thing. She'd planned my death with her ex, rehearsed it, brought me to that cliff. Panicked didn't cut it. The detective asked why she didn't stop, and she just shook her head, said, I don't know. I turned away from the glass, done watching. I'd mourned the day I found that policy, every smile, every kiss since then had been fake, hers and mine. This wasn't about love anymore. It was business, protecting myself, proving what she'd done. They asked if I wanted to talk to her. I said no. What was there to say? She'd made her choice, and I'd made mine. I left the station, drove home, and sat in the dark, Jordan's words echoing. She's building your case. She had. The footage, the bottle, Lance's face, it was all there. I wasn't the victim she'd counted on. I was the one still standing. I woke up the next morning to my phone buzzing like crazy, text from coworkers, a missed call from my sister, even a news alert with my name in it. Word had gotten out overnight, and it spread fast. The local paper had the story plastered online. Man survives murder plot by wife and her secret lover. They dug up everything. The insurance policy, the tox report, Lance's arrest. Someone had nabbed him at a dive bar in Nevada, halfway to the border, drunk and mouthing off about how he'd been set up. Camille was under house arrest now, stuck at her sister's place with an ankle monitor while the charges piled up. I skimmed the article, my stomach twisting at the photo they'd used, us at that Italian restaurant, smiling for the selfie I'd posted. Perfect couple, my ass. I tossed the phone on the couch and made coffee, trying to block out the noise. It didn't work. By the time I got to the office, it was everywhere. Guys I'd worked with for years wouldn't meet my eyes, just nodded quick and shuffled off. Others whispered behind cubicle walls, their voices dropping when I walked by. I heard poor bastard more than once, and it stung, not because I cared what they thought, but because it was true. I'd been blind, married to a woman who'd plotted my death, and now the whole world knew it. I kept my head down, focused on emails I didn't really read, until my boss, Grace Hallberg, called me into her office. She shut the door behind me, waved me to a chair, and sat across her desk, hands folded. Grace was older, sharp, the kind of woman who didn't mess around but didn't judge either. You okay? She asked, straight to it. I shrugged, rubbed my neck, and said, not really. She nodded like she'd expected that, then leaned forward. I saw the news. Hell of a thing. You don't have to be here, you know. Take some time. I shook my head. I'd rather work. Keeps me busy. She studied me for a second, then said, fair enough. But if you need to talk, my door's open. I didn't know what to say. Thanks didn't feel right, so I just nodded. Then I blurted out, I feel like I lost something I never truly had. It came out raw, more honest than I'd meant, and I regretted it right away. But Grace didn't flinch. She leaned back, crossed her arms, and said, "Sometimes peace begins where illusion ends. You're figuring that out now." I stared at her, those words sinking in. Illusion. That's what Camille and I had been. A pretty picture I'd bought into until the frame cracked. I mumbled something about getting back to work and left her office, her voice lingering in my head. The rest of the day dragged. I avoided the break room, skipped lunch, just stared at my screen until the clock hit 5. Driving home, I kept the radio off, no chance I'd catch some DJ yapping about my life. The house felt too quiet when I walked in, like it was holding its breath. Camille's stuff was still everywhere, her coat on the rack, a pair of her sneakers by the door. I'd deal with it later. For now, I cracked a beer, sat on the couch, and let the silence settle. My phone buzzed again, Jordan this time. Lance is singing, blaming her. Cops are eating it up. I texted back. Good. Let them sort it. I didn't care who pointed fingers at who, Camille or Lance. They were both guilty. The news kept churning. By the next morning, it was on TV, some local anchor with big hair reading off a script, calling it a shocking betrayal. They showed Lance's mugshot, scruffy and mean-looking, then cut to a clip of our house, a reporter standing out front like it was a crime scene. I turned it off, grabbed my keys, and went for a drive. Anywhere but here. I ended up at a park a few miles out, just walking the paths, hands in my pockets. Kids were running around, dogs barking, normal life going on like mine hadn't blown up. I sat on a bench, watched a guy toss a frisbee to his Labrador, and felt this weird mix of envy and relief. Envy because I'd never have that simple happiness with Camille, relief because I dodged her plan. My phone rang, Grace again. "Checking in," she said when I picked up. "You didn't look great yesterday." I told her I was fine, just tired, and she didn't push. "Come by the office tomorrow," she said. "We'll figure out a lighter load for you." I thanked her, hung up, and stayed on that bench until the sun dipped low. Back home, I cracked another beer, stared at the wall, and let Grace's words roll around again. Peace begins where illusion ends. Maybe she was right. The disgrace wasn't mine, it was Camille's, Lance's, splashed across every screen and paper. I'd survived it. That had to count for something. I woke up the next morning with a headache from too many beers and a house that still felt like a museum to a life I didn't live anymore. Camille's stuff was everywhere. Her perfume on the dresser, her books on the shelf, that stupid little plant she'd stuck on the kitchen counter years ago. It wasn't home. It was a reminder. I filed for divorce that day, drove straight to the lawyer's office after coffee, and signed the papers without a second thought. The guy handling it, some gray-haired suit named Tom, looked over the details and asked if I was sure. "She's facing charges," he said, tapping his pen. "You could wait. Leverage that." I shook my head. "I just want her gone." He nodded, didn't argue, and said it'd be quick since we didn't have kids or much to split. I left his office lighter, like I'd shed a layer of something heavy. When I got home, I started cleaning her out. I grabbed a box from the garage and went room by room, tossing anything that screamed Camille. Her clothes, those fancy dresses she loved, the scarves, even her underwear, went straight into donation bags. I didn't care if she'd want them later. She wasn't coming back here. The luxury car she'd begged me to buy, a sleek black thing I never liked, I listed online that afternoon. Some guy offered cash within an hour, and I had it towed out by dinner. Every piece I got rid of felt like peeling off a scab, ugly at first, but better after. The plant was last. I stood there in the kitchen, staring at it, some leafy thing she'd named Betsy like it was a pet. I'd watered it when she forgot, kept it alive through her neglect. Now it just mocked me. I dumped it in the trash, pot and all, and watched the lid snap shut. Good riddance. I wasn't mad anymore, not like before, when I'd paced the house, fist clenched, replaying her betrayal. That fire had burned out somewhere between the cliff and the courthouse. What I felt now was quieter, cleaner. I wanted my life back, not hers. So I started running again. I'd let that slip over the years, work, marriage, excuses, but the park near the house had a good loop, and I hit it the next morning. My legs burned, my lungs screamed, but I kept going, sweat dripping down my face. It hurt, but it was mine. No one telling me where to step, no one waiting at the end with a poison bottle. Just me and the path. I cooked too. Real meals, not the takeout I'd lived on since Briar Ridge. First night, I made spaghetti, simple stuff with sauce from a jar, but it tasted better than anything Camille had plated up in her perfect wife act. I ate at the table, not the couch, and left the TV off. The quiet used to scare me. Too much room for thinking, but now it felt good, like I was taking up space again. A week into this, I adopted Benny. I'd been scrolling online, restless, when I saw him. A scruffy mutt with one ear flopped over, stuck at a rescue an hour away. The ad said he'd been dumped, loyal but shy. Sounded familiar. I drove out that Saturday, met him in a little pen where he sniffed my hand and wagged his tail slow, like he wasn't sure he could trust me yet. I got it. We'll figure it out, I told him, and signed the papers. Bringing him home was the best thing I'd done in months. He patted around the house, sniffing corners, then plopped on the rug like he'd always been there. I scratched his ears, and he leaned into it, eyes half closed. Loyalty. I hadn't felt that in years. Not from Camille, not from anyone. Benny didn't care about insurance policies or headlines. He just wanted a walk and a bowl of kibble. I gave him both, and we settled into a rhythm. Work got easier too. Grace kept her word, cut my hours a bit, and the whispers at the office faded. People stopped treating me like a walking tragedy, started asking about normal stuff, weekend plans, the weather. I'd nod, say I was good, and mean it. Each day, I shed more of the old me. The guy who'd trusted too much, who'd missed the signs. I wasn't angry anymore. I was healing. One night, Benny and I sat on the porch, him chewing a bone, me with a coffee. The air was cool, stars popping out above the trees. I thought about Camille, locked up at her sister's, waiting for court, and felt nothing. No hate, no love, just done. The house was mine now, stripped of her shadow. The car was gone, the plant was trash, and I had Benny snoring beside me. I'd cleaned her out, cleaned me out too, in a way. What was left was simple. Runs in the morning, meals I cooked, a dog who stuck close. It wasn't much, but it was real. For the first time in a long time, I slept through the night. I was sitting at the kitchen table one morning, Benny sprawled at my feet, when my phone pinged with a message from Jordan. It was a forwarded email, something cryptic at first, sent from Grace, my boss, to some woman named Elise Hartwell. He's been through it, Grace had written. Might be a fit for your work. Files attached. Jordan's note was short. Check this out. Your story's going places. I frowned, sipped my coffee, and opened the attachments. Copies of my case files, the insurance policy, the tox report, even a still from the micro camera footage. My gut twisted. Grace had sent all this to some stranger. Why? I scrolled back to her email, caught the words criminal psychologist and case study. Elise Hartwell. Jordan had dug up her name before, tied her to seminars on manipulative partners, financial predators, stuff like that. I leaned back, staring at the screen. My life, my nightmare, packaged up for some shrink to dissect. I should have been mad. Grace hadn't asked me. But instead, I felt this weird curiosity. What did they see in it? I texted Jordan. What's her deal? He called me right away, voice buzzing with energy. Elise is big in her field. Writes books, speaks at conferences. Grace knows her from some old project. Looks like they think you're a textbook survivor. Coercive control, near-miss murder. She wants to feature you. I rubbed my face, processing. Feature me how? Case study, he said. Anonymous if you want. She's already got Camille's profile pegged. Saw her type in seminars years back. You're the flip side, the guy who got out. I didn't say anything for a minute. Just listened to Benny snore. A case study. My mess turned into some lesson for shrinks and cops. It wasn't revenge. Camille was already sunk, but it was something. She's reaching out soon, Jordan added. Grace gave her your number. Up to you. I thanked him, hung up, and sat there, coffee going cold. Part of me wanted to trash the idea, keep my life mine, not some academic's project. But another part, the part that had been clawing back from the edge, saw it different. If this helped someone else spot the signs, dodge what I'd nearly missed, maybe it was worth it. 2 days later, Elise called. Her voice was warm, steady, like she'd talked to 100 guys like me. Grace says you're a fighter, she started. I'd like to hear your story, if you're willing. I hesitated, then said, yeah, okay. We met at a coffee shop the next week, a quiet place downtown. She was younger than I'd pictured, mid-30s, dark hair pulled back, glasses perched on her nose. She shook my hand, sat across from me, and got straight to it. You were in a textbook before you even knew it, she said, tapping a notebook. Camille's moves, classic predator playbook. Insurance, isolation, the perfect act. You flipped it. I nodded, told her everything. The email, the water, Briar Ridge. She scribbled notes, asked questions. How'd I feel? What tipped me off? Why'd I swap the bottles? I kept it simple, honest. I didn't want to die, I said at one point. She smiled, small but real. That's why you're here. We talked for hours, Benny waiting in the truck outside. She didn't push, just listened, piecing it together. When we wrapped up, she said, I'd like to use this, your perspective. It's rare, men don't always come forward. Could save someone. I thought about it, then said, go for it. Just keep my name out. She agreed, and that was that. A few weeks later, she emailed me a draft, dry, clinical stuff about subject M and perpetrator C, but it was us, stripped to the bones. Reading it felt strange, like watching my life through a window. It wasn't about me anymore, it was bigger. I started speaking after that. Elise hooked me up with survivor events, small gigs at first, community centers, a few cops in the room. I'd stand there, hands in my pockets, and tell it straight. The policy, the cliff, how I caught on. People listened, women mostly, but some guys too, nodding like they'd been there. One night, a man came up after, maybe 40, eyes tired. My ex drained me dry, he said. Didn't see it till she was gone. Thanks for this. I shook his hand, didn't know what to say. It hit me then. I wasn't just healing, I was helping. Each time I talked, the weight got lighter. Camille's shadow shrank, Lance's too. They were locked in their mess. Her at her sister's, him in a cell, while I was out here, moving. Benny came with me sometimes, sprawled by the podium, tail thumping. He'd sniff the room after, like he was checking for threats. Good dog. Grace checked in now and then, proud-eyed said yes to Elise. You're tougher than you look, she said once, grinning. I laughed, first real one in a while. The haunted feeling faded, step by step. I wasn't the guy from the headlines anymore. I was me again, or close to it. I didn't go to the hearing when Camille and Lance got sentenced. Didn't see the point. Jordan texted me the rundown instead. She pled guilty to conspiracy to commit murder, got 8 years. Lance took a deal for 6 after spilling more dirt on their plan. It was over, neat and tidy, locked away in some courtroom I'd never stepped foot in. I was glad for that. The day it happened, I was back at Briar Ridge, hiking the same trail with Benny trotting beside me. Full circle, I guess. The air was crisp, sky clear, no whispers of her voice or that bitter water bottle haunting the rocks. Just me, my dog, and the wind. I stood at the summit again, looking over that drop where she'd meant to push me, and felt nothing but quiet. No anger, no fear, just done. Benny sniffed around, chased a leaf, then plopped down like he owned the place. I scratched his ears, sat on a rock, and let the sun warm my face. This was mine now, not hers. When I got home that afternoon, Elise was waiting on the porch, 2 coffees in hand. I kept it warm, she said, smiling as she handed me one. I wasn't expecting her, but it didn't throw me. We'd been talking more since the case study, emails at first, then calls, her checking in on the speaking gigs. She'd come to one a week back, sat in the back row with that notebook of hers, scribbling away. Afterward, she'd said, you're good at this, helping people. It stuck with me. I took the coffee, sat on the steps, and she settled next to me. Benny nosed her hand, and she laughed, petting him like they were old friends. Heard about the sentencing, she said after a sip. How's it feel? I shrugged, stared at the yard. Like it's finally over. No big win, just over. She nodded, didn't push. We sat there quiet for a bit, the kind of silence that didn't need filling. The coffee was good strong, no sugar, how I liked it. She'd remembered from our first meeting. You ever think about what's next? She asked eventually, glancing at me. I hadn't, not really. I'd been so focused on clawing out of the mess, Camille, Lance, the headlines, that tomorrow felt like someone else's problem. But sitting there, with Benny sprawled between us and the day stretching out calm, I started to. Maybe keep talking, I said. The events, they help. Not just them, me too. She smiled again, bigger this time. You should. You've got a voice for it. I looked at her, caught the way her eyes crinkled at the corners, and felt something shift, small, but real. Not love, not yet, just possibility. My past with Camille was a lesson, carved deep, but it didn't own me anymore. The future? That was unwritten, and for the first time, I wanted to write it myself. We finished the coffee, talked about nothing. Her latest book, Benny's obsession with socks, until the sun dipped low. She stood, brushed off her jeans, and said, I'll see you around. Got a seminar next month. Maybe you could speak. I said I'd think about it, watched her drive off, then took Benny inside. That night, I cooked steak, rare, with potatoes, and ate with the TV off. Just the sound of him chewing a bone in the background. The house felt different now, not empty, but full in a way it hadn't before. I'd stripped out Camille's ghost, built something new, runs with Benny, talks with Elise, a life that fit me. I slept solid, no dreams of cliffs or poison, just rest. The next morning, I hit the park again, Benny loping beside me, and thought about what Elise had said. A voice for it. Maybe I did. I'd survived, turned it around, and people listened when I talked. Not for pity, but for real. Guys like that man who'd thanked me. Women who'd nodded along. I could keep going, turn the mess into something useful. Back home, I emailed Elise. Sign me up for that seminar. She replied fast, done. You'll kill it. I laughed, set the phone down, and grabbed Benny's leash. We walked the neighborhood, him sniffing every tree, me breathing easy. Camille was a memory. Lance too, locked up, shrinking in my rear view. The headlines had faded, the whispers at work gone quiet. Grace still checked in, Jordan too, but I didn't need them to carry me anymore. I had this, me, Benny, a coffee with Elise now and then. It wasn't perfect, wasn't loud, but it was mine. I looked at the sky, clear and wide, and felt it. My future, unwritten, but starting now.